We want to take you for a virtual tour to ancient Shiloh, Shiloh in Hebrew, most amazing archaeological site in Israel, Samaria, 31 kilometers north of Jerusalem. As the well springs and gives life to the inhabitants of the city, Shiloh became a birthplace of the Israel nation, first capital where everything began. It is our guide, Alexander, by the welcoming board. Mishkan and everything related to it is his research topic for the last 20 years. After 40 years of wandering in the desert, the children of Israel enter the promised land. Here in Shiloh, Yehoshua ben Nun establishes the Mishkan. Here in the lottery, he divides the inherited portions of land between the tribes. Hannah prays for a son, and it is here that her son Shmuel grows up to become the prophet who would institute the kingdom of Israel. And it is here we return after 2,000 years and rebuild it all anew. Tel Shiloh is the large archaeological site. You need at least 3 hours to visit all exhibits and sites. Some Christians believe the tabernacle was standing where basilica is found. Muslims associate it with the place of the mosque. The third option is on top of the hill where visitor center is now. Another option, very official one, which is closer to our heart, on the very northern side of the Tel, where we will take you. As you see on the map, Shiloh geographically is the center of Israel. Tribal division happened after they arrived. First capital sits in the mountains of Ephraim. Coming out of Egypt, Jews intended to cross the biblical land, as we call it now, on international route, right here. Then they turned right and went around and asked permission of Moab the king. It is written Moab got a rejection as well, went around and won over these 2 kings. When they entered this passage, they had a dispute, and 2 leaders of the tribes, Gad and Reuben, asked to grant them land this side of the Jordan. When they crossed the river, they set tabernacle first in Gilgal here. It stayed here a very short period of time and ended up finally in Shiloh, after other tribes received their territories other side of the Jordan. Now the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled together in Shiloh and set up the tabernacle of meeting there, and the land was subdued before them. This stand is a presentation of symbols of 12 for Shiloh. 12 stones of the high priest breastplate. 12 banners of the tribes. You remember Eli the high priest and judge in Shiloh, mentioned in the book of Samuel. He was wearing these precious and semi-precious stones. He was second to last and succeeded only by Samuel. "12 pictures for tabernacle belongings and high priest clothings. When the Jews just crossed the Jordan, there were 2 million men, not counting women and kids. Imagine over the period of the time 3 or more millions tents would be pitched on these rolling hills. 3 times a year they would gather for the feasts, worship, sacrifices and celebrations. All of the tents would face the tabernacle. What a scene! Among them would be faithful Elkanah, pitching up his tent somewhere on these hillsides. We read he brought once his 2 wives along and children. Hannah suffered severe emotional pain seeing other wives' children are born and growing up. Elkanah is sharing the part of the offerings with his family, giving Hannah the best part of it. We know it can be only the peace offering because peace offering is eaten on the same day and shared with the family members. Another specific purpose of that offering is vow, and Anna knows it very well. So Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now Eli the priest was sitting on a seat by the doorpost of the tabernacle of the Lord. And she was in bitterness of the soul, and prayed to the Lord, and wept in anguish. Then she made a vow. We know that her vow was heard. Samuel the prophet became her answer. It feels unreal to stay on a spot where somewhere right here Hannah was staying and putting her heart to God. Where Samuel lived all his children years and grew up in the mighty man of God. Tabernacle is a presentation what's supposed to happen to Israel. Israel was destined to bring forth a son. Samuel became that son, a prototype of Messiah in a time of judges. All Israel from Dan to Beersheba recognized him as a prophet of the Lord. Here in Shiloh, Samuel prophesied for the first time. He organized and united the tribes of Israel. Look at these rolling hills which were covered with vineyards. They played a big role for the annual Feast of Love, 15th of Av. In Judges we read that after a terrible story with a Levite and his concubine, Benjamin tribe was almost annihilated, women killed. But the turn was marked by the decision of the elders for the male survivors of Benjamin tribe. When the daughters of Shiloh come out to perform the dances, then come out from the vineyards, and every man would catch a wife for himself from the daughters of Shiloh. That event preserved almost extinct tribe of Benjamin. Till now, 15th of Av is the wide celebrated feast in Israel, something similar to Valentine's Day, but with a biblical background. We arrived to the proposed site of the tabernacle on the northern platform. Some researchers believe the tabernacle stood on a platform flanked by two rock walls. The width of the platform matches the width of the courtyard of the tabernacle, mentioned in the Torah, 50 cubits. An east-west orientation matches the description of the tabernacle, whose opening faced east with the Holy of Holies to the west. It stood right here in front of us, slightly to the left, where the road leads. Around on the hill 12 banners with the heraldic symbols of the tribes. Let us go direction where tabernacle stayed. The Star of David from Basilica, and a platform marking the area where the history happened. It feels unreal to stay on a spot where somewhere right here Hannah was staying and putting her heart to God. Where Samuel lived all his children years and grew up in the mighty man of God. Right here, on a spot where most probably Ark of the Covenant stood and Shekinah glory resided, we prayed as Hannah prayed about Messiah return and all nations gathered for his coming. At the top of the hill is Observation Tower. It is one of a kind multimedia visitor center with a giant 180-degree screen. Here the stories of Shiloh combined with the scenery of the place. For 369 years, Tabernacle was crowning this place, making it sacred for the whole nation. They put the doorposts and a stone wall around, and there where it stood. Alexander is doing measurements of the courtyard. One large step is 2 cubits. He counted just about 25 steps. Borders of this area was hewn for some specific purposes. There is a great topographical similarity between this mountain and a temple mountain in Jerusalem. Both are enclosed by steep descents into the valley. Both are extended and have a retaining wall. Both are not on the summit of the mountain, but is beyond the summit northward, at the lower point. It is all according to the commandment of God not to do as the nations around practice, to sacrifice on the mountain tops. The children of Israel custom is different. Therefore, this location fits all three main requirements for identifying the site of the tabernacle: dimensions, directions, and natural defendability. This position of the tabernacle fits description in the book of Samuel. The messenger arrives at Shiloh to report Israel's defeat at the battle. From the passage, it seems that the messenger crosses the city first and reaches Eli the priest, who is waiting in the Mishkan that stands apparently in a separate area. In between these big stones, you can see the carved bull head. It used to be front of the temple stone. Somebody after destruction of the temple used it for rebuilding his own house. How do we know that's the stone from the temple? Temple stones is always bigger than any resident house stone. This massive structure inside the house is the ancient olive press and the crushing basin. Olive oil is one of the top important ingredients of the tabernacle. Only top quality olive oil, very first press, is used for the menorah because it doesn't create the smoke. Oil used in grain offerings, also in making bread for Mishkan, anointing the priests, and the last oil, last press, which comes from the press, would be for the home use and cooking. This ancient street leads up to the hill where Tabernacle stayed. When the Israelites arrived, it was already existing Canaanite city with a broad wall. They expanded the city outside the wall and used the wall as the foundation for construction and as the source of building blocks. Dr. Scott Stripling is the leading archaeologist of this place, says that he answered the call of the prophet Jeremiah, who wrote, "Go now to my place that was in Shiloh." And so he did. He thinks that it might be that the tabernacle was standing in all these places through the course of the years. Just few meters from tabernacle, we find underground caves and warrens. Look at this one. Additional caves branch off from this cave. Inside the cave, on the western wall, you can see the niches for the oil lamps and candles. People in the later ages live here to hide from persecution. In peaceful periods and times of the tabernacle, it served as a storehouse and the cool rooms, where the tithes and the offerings for Levites and priests were kept. These storages are unique for Israel because such structures were found only here in Shiloh and in closer proximity to the temple in Jerusalem. All about these caves tell us it was designed for the sacred purposes. Now we want to show you most precious heap of the rubbish I ever saw in my life. These potter sheds are dating 1,500 years old. They are rejects. Some of them have numbers and archaeological signs like Shiloh written. After washing and analyzing, they've been thrown away. They have no archaeological value, maybe no ancient writing or ornament or picture, not matching anywhere. Also too many of them, tons. That's why they left here for the tourists. Many reasons for this amount of the potter sheds is millions of pilgrims to Shiloh every year, who brings their festival offerings and tithes. You understand they don't have Tupperware to pack the food in. or restaurants or guest houses to feed them. They bring the festive food, the tithes, and the offerings as commanded in Torah in their clay pots. The clay pots are holy and must be eaten on a holy spot. The vessels can't be reused, but only broken. They ate, celebrated, leaving pottersheds behind. All of these hills facing the Tabernacle hill are fully covered with the pottersheds. Many truckloads were already removed from the area. But surprisingly, just over these hills, other side, like a line drawn. No more sheds. Everything is clean. Shiloh is from one hand side is the end of the history of Judges. Other hand side is a new beginning. You remember the sons of Eli the priest were corrupted. So was the whole congregation. God turned his face away from the people who went against him. Jeremiah in the Psalms allude to it. He forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh. Philistines went to war against Israelites. Hoping that the magic trick would work, Israelites took the ark that was never allowed to do and went to battle. Ark was captured, battle was lost, sons of Eli the priests were killed, the enemies came to Shiloh, burned the tabernacle and the entire city to the ground. Charred raisins were found at the site as proof of immense fire dated to the middle of 11th century BC. Dozens of intact pottery vessels were found in a deep layer of ash. This is Byzantine basilica from the 4th century. In the early 20th century, archaeological expedition from Denmark rebuilt it. You can clearly see the mikvah, ritual bath, and a water channel bringing water to it. This floor is amazing. 4th century mosaic, made out of tiny blocks. In the sun, if you pour a little bit of water to it, it sparkles with colors. All the natural colors they used in those days. Shiloh has outstanding hologram of the tabernacle with advanced technology. It is worth it to come to Shiloh just because of the hologram and museum and visitor center. And fascinating Storehouses exhibit. Close to the entrance, an ancient olive press. In those days, a donkey or a bull would rotate this large pole to make the crashing stone work. In our trip in the steps of the Tabernacle, Shiloh was a highlight. We spent a good half a day here. In 1978, the Jewish settlement of Shiloh was renewed. Currently, there is about 100,000 residents. A large synagogue was built in the center, in the shape and the style of Tabernacle. It is amazing. We are looking forward to tell you more about it. Tens of thousands of tourists visit Shiloh every year. We too, surprisingly, met people from other side of the globe we knew before, who were also seeking to know where was Tabernacle stayed and where his presence dwelt. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh, he who is to be sent, comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. Half a day was not enough for us to visit everything in Shiloh. We wish to return back, but maybe even as a volunteers, to dig this God's presence-soaked soil and to breathe its free spirit air. Maybe one day you can also visit Israel and start your journey in this amazing place where everything began. Go now to my place that was in Shiloh, where I made my name dwell.